During their time, the Beatles had many arguments with each other, and they did some messed up things. You will be surprised to know that Yoko Ono was not the only woman who got between the band members. The band members went through several relationships, and some of them were pretty complicated. One of the Fab Four members, George Harrison, was quite famous for sleeping with the wives of other men during his time. He even betrayed his friend Ringo when he slept with his wife, Maureen. How did George Harrison betray Ringo Starr? Was it the first time he slept with any of his friends' wives? Was this the ultimate story of betrayal? You are going to find out everything in this video. But before we start, please take a moment and subscribe to the channel below if you haven't already. Also, press the bell icon to stay in touch with all our uploads. Thank you. The Betrayal. Coming back to the video, George Harrison was married to the model Pattie Boyd. The marriage took place in 1966 after dating for 2 years. They had an intimate wedding at a registry office in Surrey, England. But unfortunately, the wedding didn't last even for a decade. By the 1970s, the Beatles had gone from the height of their band to disbanding altogether. In their private lives, things were fractious. John Lennon had left his wife, Cynthia, for Yoko, and Ringo Starr's relationship was not going well. Pattie Boyd, George Harrison's first wife, claimed that Ringo and George were fighting over the same woman, Maureen, who was Ringo's wife. The Beatles started on a good foot, but they became a bit antagonistic to each other with time. The marriage of George Harrison was falling apart, and Pattie had fallen for the man, Eric Clapton, who was going to become her second husband. Pattie claimed that while she was involved with another man, George and Maureen were also having an affair. Maureen often turned up at midnight at George's place, and she'd be there till the next day. According to writing in the Beatles' Diary Volume 2, after the breakup in 2001, George confessed how much he loved Maureen while he and his wife were visiting the stars, which led to an affair. Pattie revealed the unfaithful act to Ringo after she found her husband and Maureen in bed. Ringo was very angry with the act of infidelity and threatened to divorce Maureen. In those days, a headline became very famous: George falls for Ringo's wife and it's divorce Beatles style. It was published in the Montreal Gazette in 1983. It is also said that Pattie had an affair with the Rolling Stones star Ronnie Wood around the same time. Martin Scorsese's film, George Harrison Living in the Material World, revealed how the couple was visiting Harrison's friend, Wood, when Ronnie took him aside and told him he intended to sleep with George's wife. Harrison, in response, pointed to the room that Wood was sharing with his wife Chrissy and said, "I shall be sleeping there." In 1977, Pattie and George's divorce was finalized after she had left him in 1974. Not long after that, Ringo and Maureen also split, and in 1975, the couple divorced. However, they reportedly remained friends until her death from leukemia in 1994, despite receiving a bone marrow transplant from her and Ringo's son, Zach. Harrison was involved with many women during his life, even during his second marriage to Olivia. Olivia revealed that her husband had several affairs even after all the craziness of the 1970s and divorce from Pattie. She endured them, simply waiting for them to pass and forgiving him when they did. Even Paul McCartney called his friend red-blooded and fond of things men like. Red-blooded seems like an understatement when it comes to Harrison because he had an abiding fondness for other men's wives, much like his devotion to marijuana and sitar music. According to the Beatles expert, Bill Harry, George had hundreds and hundreds of affairs. John Lennon was probably the most highly sexed Beatle. George was next after him. Talking about the affairs of Harrison, he was also involved with Madonna at one point. He had a heavy flirtation with Madonna on the set of the 1986 film Shanghai Surprise, despite the presence of her first husband, Sean Penn. Madonna was not happy with her husband, and she found Harrison very understanding and sympathetic. He came to see them filming in Macau and met her several times in London before and after the production. Obviously, they got on well, even though the movie turned out to be such a disaster. Madonna's brother, Christopher Ciccone, noted that Harrison felt moved to read the riot act to Penn over his hostile and aggressive attitude during filming and gave the actor a stern ticking off. But he treated Madonna with kid gloves. When the band started disintegrating, the relationship between Harrison and Pattie got bad, and George became unfaithful at that time. By 1973, George lost his way and had begun to pursue Ringo's wife, Maureen. It all started when George confessed his love for Maureen in front of Ringo and both women. After that, Pattie found Maureen and George in bed together. It is also said that when Ringo and Maureen were visiting George and Pattie's house, Maureen planned to take revenge on Ringo for having an affair with some girl, so she chose Harrison for the job. What Maureen did was not a correct plan, much less with George, who was such a close friend of her husband at that time, Ringo. And also, the rumors were that George was a little drunk that day, although we don't know how true that was. Ringo and Maureen's marriage didn't last much longer either. By 1975, Ringo got engaged in several affairs and developed a drinking problem, and the two finalized their divorce. Somehow, Ringo forgave George, and the pair were still friends until George's death from cancer in 2001. While George was on his deathbed, he offered to accompany Ringo to the hospital to see Ringo's daughter, who was having surgery. He made a bleak joke in the hospital in Switzerland, where he died. Marriages and divorces were par for the course for rock and roll bands in the 1970s, but George's move on his old friend and bandmate's wife was out of line. What do you think about George betraying his friend by sleeping with his wife? Tell us in the comment section below. I would love to read your comments. Also, please like the video and share it with a Beatles lover. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and keep watching my videos. I will see you guys soon with another one. Stay tuned.